I'll be starting my speech in three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to discuss why there is a need for the AU to aggressively intervene between the African countries. First of all, I'd like to start by clarifying what the AU actually is. It is a protected set of countries which have some sort of agreement with each other that they will protect each other's interests and they will look out for each other in times of need, whether it be economically, whether it be politically, or whether it be in any other problem in which another fellow member needs aid or in matters of trade and etc. Moreover, I'd like to clarify what military coups d'états mean. It basically means that when you're trying to overthrow a government and trying to um, propose support sort of martial law and getting over and taking over the government and abolishing democracy as an attempt by the military of a country. And moreover, I'd like to state that why there is a need for the AU to intervene in these conflict zones. So by conflict zones, I'm referring to the countries in which coup d'etats are operating in. So moving on, first of all, when people eventually try to when they're put into a conflict zone, when they realize that the moderates can't resolve the issue, so they tend to become radicalized. People start feeling protective of their loved ones. They start feeling protective of their hard work earnings. They start feeling protective, and then they start retaliating. They start eliminating potential threats to themselves. People may want to have peace, but sometimes they just get so protective that they start turning towards rather violent ways. So before we turn to that, I would first of all discuss the main economic aspects which require the AU intervening. So first of all, I would like to point out that whenever a conflict arises in a zone, whenever there is something which puts off a country from its base, specifically a martial law or something, a military trying to threaten the government, you are overthrowing the business organizations, the companies, the basic foundation base of an economy of the African countries. So it what would it do? First of all, it would affect certainty. It would affect investment opportunities. How? You might say, first of all, when violence and uprising occurs, people start to feel threatened, like I priorly mentioned. So when they start to feel threatened, they start closing down. They start to prioritize their own well-being over their or rather their financial well-being. So when they start to get defensive in this manner, people start seeing a lack of supply. People start seeing a lack of supply unmatched with a fall in demand. People start demanding more necessities. People start demanding more survival needs. So when uncertainty starts arriving, even if there is not as much uncertainty, people may act in a way which can cause them to eventually have the same economic repercussions as uncertainty being practiced. So not only the uncertainty of businesses, people always get uncertain about their jobs. They're being laid off. Their kids education is suffering with their jobs as well because schools are being shut down. The people are scared for themselves. I'll be taking them in a while. People are scared for themselves. People are scared for their economic security. So not only this affects businesses as a whole, it affects human beings. It affects their well-being to stand up for themselves, whether it be financially or whether it be vocally. And moreover, I would like to add on that investors specifically, they lose interest in investing in currencies because they have seen a past trend. They have seen that whenever country gets hit by aggressive riots, in this case, they start to lose confidence. They start to stop investing in a currency. They stop buying it. They start selling the currency. So when the market supply increases of the currency, what happens? The currency depreciates, its value falls, which later you can see the effects while
Go
you're
ahead.
trading. While I'm, I'll take them in the end while you're trading. So when you're trading, so basically it helps sorry, not helps, it prevents people from actually accessing their basic needs and actually fulfilling their demand, and as such their standard of living ultimately falls. So I will be going on to my point number 3, which is that African countries, their main trading speciality or something you can say is basically mining related stuff, whether it be gold, whether it be diamonds, whether it be um, iron, and anything which can be mined, because that's their specialty, that's their main source of income. So when such disruptions happen, what happens is that these businesses, these mining corporations, they cannot operate. So not only that affects their own prosperities of trading, and but it also affects the economy as a whole, and other economies as well, who are actually buying stuff from them and are totally dependent upon them, because these tradings, they take so much money, it's so much flow of exchange of money, that it's absolutely vital that these are not let go on, because it leads to a lot of further losses. So not only as African economies in a whole, but also their surrounding economies of the neighbors as well. Moreover, in coup situations, military is threatening in a way to show a power move. So we need to so as when they're threatening, so what happens is that people start to protest, people start feeling um, threatened, they start protesting, they start going against in violent uprisings, they need to hold start reacting, which is completely normal, that is human nature. When they're being comprised when they're being not comprised, when they're being deprived of their main rights, and they're being held back. So uh, that basically results not only in loss of lives, which is you are prone to that, but also a loss of infrastructure. So to ensure the well-being of everyone present in the sorry,
Time is up.
can I complete my sentence?
Um, we'll no longer be writing because it's already 7 minutes 20 seconds.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that fine speech. Now let's have the leader of opposition. Here.
Hello. He likes to uh
Thank you so much, leader of opposition, for that fine speech. Now let's have Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Mhm. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'll be starting in a bit. Starting my speech in three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, opening opposition's first speaker came here and offered a variety of arguments. Firstly, she went with the fact that because the African nations themselves have limited influence in the region, the intervention would not have any substantial effect. However, ladies and gentlemen, we argue that the limited influence is because of the sheer fact that the African Union to this date has been in a passive position, and as such, they have not been able to exert their influence. The consequence of limited influence is as a result of the status quo, and does and will not exist in our world when the African Union actually takes practical measures to intervene in this conflict. Furthermore, she mentioned that this we run the risk of picking the wrong side in the conflict. Firstly, they need to understand that in and of itself is a subjective issue, and that of course does not mean that we must let the status quo go as it is, with the deaths of millions of people and with the loss of economic infrastructure, as well as the very crippling of a country's economy, as raised by our first speaker. Furthermore, she said that we run the risk of introducing more actors. However, that does not necessarily mean that we introduce bad actors. On the contrary, it gives the countries incentive to intervene in this conflict. Furthermore, it also solves the another issue that she raised, which was of limited budget, as she said that all of Africa in general is in an economically compromised state. However, what if we introduce international actors such as the UN, and this will be highlighted in the mechanism that I present. What if we introduce international actors, international good actors that have the economic capability to intervene in this region and intervene for the good of the people? Furthermore, I believe that opposition fundamentally understands what aggressive intervention means. Ladies and gentlemen, while aggressive intervention often relates to military intervention, it does not always imply it. In the info slide itself, it was said that the economic community of Western African state was firstly applauded for their intervention in the form of I'll be taking them shortly, in the form of economic sanctions firstly and military intervention seconds. Negotiations can also take place on our side of the house. Yes, PI.
So the info site does say that you have to put boots on the ground. But if you have put boots on the ground, why are they still not likely to negotiate with you at the point at which you antagonize them?
No, we believe, and I'll take it to this in the mechanism that firstly we should prioritize negotiations and then military intervention. Obviously, if it is a necessity, then we are forced to do it. Furthermore, onto my positive case. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that as a continental organization, the African Union has a moral obligation to protect the people of Africa by remaining passive in the face of coups. The AU is failing to fulfill its mandate. Aggressive intervention is necessary to demonstrate the AU's commitment to the principles of democracy, human rights, and good governance. Furthermore, we talk about accountability and transparency. Coups often involve the misuse of public resources and corruption. Aggressive intervention can help to hold those responsible for coups accountable and promote transparency in government. This can help to build trust between governments and their citizens. Furthermore, we are talking about setting up precedents. Aggressive intervention in these school situations can set a precedent for future actions. It can deter would-be coup plotters and send a clear message that the AU will not tolerate unconstitutional changes in government. Furthermore, this also contradicts the point raised by the opening opposition that countries will not have incentives. This actually gives them incentives, and it is one successful project. That is what all it takes for it to be a constant cycle of good activity and a constant cycle of betterment of the people. Furthermore, we talk about protection of human rights. Military coups often lead to severe erosion of human rights. And the fact is that the civilians are disproportionately affected as basic freedoms are curtailed and fundamental rights are violated. These abuses can include extrajudicial killings, arbitrary arrest, torture, and the suppression of freedom of speech and assembly. Aggressive intervention by the AU can help to protect the rights of the people and prevent further suffering. With this mind, I put forward this mechanism in which every member state firstly imposes political and economic sanctions on the affected region and on the military. They impose trade embargoes, specifically on the import and export of arms and ammunition. Furthermore, we propose the establishment of a diplomatic peacekeeping force, which includes officers from every country, and if the and only if the other state is not willing to negotiate, will we form a military peacekeeping force. And even its primary purpose would be to rescue the refugees as well as the displaced people. Furthermore, we advocate for the collaborations with international actors, for example, UN bodies such as the Human Rights Council as well as the Security Council, to ensure peace and stability in the region, to ensure that proper governments and democratical governments are established, and to ensure that there is no cyclical cycle of hate and violence. And we also propose the collaboration with the economic community of the West African states in light of their recent advancements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DPM, for that fine speech. Now let's have DLO. Here. Thank you so much, DLO, for that fine speech. Now let's have the member of government to open, close, and half. Here.
Hi, can I check if I'm audible and visible?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't have the blur background. Never mind. Okay. I want to do 3 pieces of framing at the start of this speech. Then I'll give you 2 extensions on why CG takes the debate. Let's start with framing. 1. Yes, coups are bad and we would like to stabilize the country. A lot of OO's arguments kind of assume that we'd go in and just intervene in every single country. On CG, we posit that the way it will be done is obviously they'll weigh cost-benefit analysis. If it is true, like you say, that they don't have the budget to do so, obviously they will not intervene in all 20 African states where there are conflicts, right? We think we can pick and choose our fights. So that's that out of the way, right? But OO's claim that we don't know what's happening is absurd. Like, even me in Southeast Asia probably knows in some countries one side is right and one side is wrong. If you read the info side, it says ECOWAS has been lauded for an aggressive approach. So, it kind of shows you there is a trend that there is a correct side and there is a wrong side. Mugabe is just like one example. I think you also need to be charitable and defend cases where obviously the coup is bad and the person in power is bad, right? Like, think Myanmar. I mean, it's not Africa, but Myanmar and Aung San Suu Kyi, getting couped. If LO is right that there are high costs of coups, then obviously we won't do it all the time. We remove obviously problematic leaders. I don't see why this budget problem isn't something we can't get around, right? But let's deal with precedent as well. Like, it doesn't make sense. They say, oh, if you intervene once, then you must intervene in every other coup. Like, logically, if you gut check this isn't true, just because I joined a tournament this weekend does not mean I must join a tournament until the rest of the year. Like, this is also in tension with their argument that, oh, we have limited budget and we cannot do it all the time. Then we will not do it all the time. The second framing we want to say is what we are okay with. And here I think O is very uncharitable. We're okay with defending putting boots on the ground, military funding and interventions, but I think they also need to contend with another aspect of debate, which is sanctions, things which don't require boots on the ground, things like propping up leaders, because a lot of these African leaders lack legitimacy, things like even just arming people with weapons against the strong military who clamps down on human rights. We think these are also things that the AU would do. We're not sure why it has to be boots on the ground. Lastly, why do these conflicts occur? And let's characterize a little bit, right? Obviously, there are weak democratic processes where leaders lack legitimacy of the people. We think the AU can help by propping up leaders as well, right? You don't actually have to go in and, kill people. But the second reason we like to posit is that armed forces are usually a lot stronger than the government. At the point in which, we have boots on the ground or we give them funding and guns, we can fund the country to make sure there is a better fight back against the government. 2 extensions in this speech and why CG is clear. First, 1. Why intervention is justified. I think OG tells us why coups are bad. But I think to add to this analysis and to weigh against all, we really need to think about what military leaders would do after the coup. Contrary to what DLO asserts, I don't think they are peace-loving people who would help the country. We think military leaders tend to consolidate their power via coups, right? That things like less democratization, things like more power to the military, things like more clamp down on individual rights of citizens, human rights violations, restricting peaceful demonstrations, throwing or even killing journalists who report on corrupt governments. All these are things which, coup dictators do. In the absence of aggressive intervention, more coups are encouraged to spring up. And here's a fun fact. The biggest indicator in the entire world as to whether a country will undergo a coup, which is very rare by the way, is whether the country has had a coup before. That is to say there is necessarily a spiral in countries where there is one coup happening. I think as O correctly points out, it's also very likely to have coups reoccurring again in the future. So if you want to weigh against O saying, oh, but if you intervene, you kill people, you also need to weigh in the fact that lots of coups are often a cycle where the coup happens once and then in the future it happens again, right? We think we need to send a strong message and a taboo against the coup. The reason this outweighs OG is because OG talks about these things, but they don't explain the spiral effect, right? CG will fill in the missing mechanistic links by telling you that we need some level of deterrence and we need some level of strong pushback against what's happening in the coups. This also directly engages with O, because I think their counterfactual is missing. They say, if you put boots on the ground, they will not mediate with you. Yeah, but they don't mediate with you anyway. Now, if you really think about how mediation works, the problem with their counterfactual is that no successful coup dictator would want to come to the table. Mediation only works when both parties are willing to come to the table. If the person is in coup, has in power, has a lot of weapons, why the fuck would he come to the table? He's like in power, he can clamp down on people, he's literally called a dictator. That guy ain't gonna negotiate with you guys. So both parties have to consent. They don't consent under your side, where the AU has no power and has no effective mechanism to intervene. So military leaderships are often able to play on anti-government rhetoric to rile up the citizens and overthrow the government. Our claim on CG is that we create more deterrence when we are backed by the AU, right, which has a lot of money and a lot of power. So this also due to this old saying, oh, we are against the West. Dude, African Union is made of African states. It's not made by the West, right? Given the spiral effect I just explained, the reason this weighs against O is you must also consider the number of deaths right now versus a lot of deaths in the future that could have been prevented if you just took a stronger stance. We must increase the taboo against coups, and we must meet it with a strong response. Secondly, why the AU has great power to carry this out, and OG doesn't prove capacity. In a bit, please. Literally, the AU is only created to promote peace and stability in the region. Decisions are binding on other member states, right? There are talks of a permanent peacekeeping force. Sanctions are effective because the AU is part of the G20. They've broken numerous trade agreements between countries. All this goes to show that there is capacity to do so, something which OG doesn't do. Proof. But also the truth of saying, we weaken the African Union. The LO is lying. The AU is criticized for not taking stronger actions against other countries. Like look at Sudan and a bunch of other countries. All these conflicts are conflicts where the AU does not intervene. So his claim that, but we have done this in status quo, it's not working. No, in status quo we don't do anything. That's why it's the change in the motion, right? So most social groups have criticized the AU for being a paper tiger. On paper it works, but in reality it has no bark, no bite, no intervention, and no power.
The ECOWAS has met no success to the criticism of African unions and the celebration of the US. You assume that you are able to deter this. You don't explain why the African Union is powerful enough.
Yeah, let me explain it again. Two things. One, the AU is a lot bigger than ECOWAS. Secondly, the response of the people on the ground. Look at the info slide. People support ECOWAS. People support the overthrowing of a military coup which killed my family. And, just generally bad for the country. Like, I think the OO premise is like, but people are generally okay with this because of Robert Mugabe. Again, one example. But for the most part, I feel like people are generally really angry as well. They just lack the financial resources to do so. At the point in which the AU endorses a strong stance against coups and stops the spiral of coups, we think we must take this debate. So don't let all lie that these dictators, are good in the future. The conditions do not change. The people in power have an incentive to hoard money for themselves and family members, not invest into state healthcare, education, or infrastructure. Rising inequality grows under the upside when they perpetrate the conditions. Their conditions don't change. You only lead to more coups in the future. I'm very proud to propose.
Thank you so much, member of government, for that speech. Now let's have the member of opposition.
Sure, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Perfect. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The first three houses in this
I'm seeing if I can blur my camera for a bit. Give me a moment. Camera. Give me a moment. Give me my appearance. I really not blur my. Wait. Okay. Servers view setting. Whatever. I'm just gonna leave it like this. Give me a moment, yeah. Cool. So am I audible? Joy, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please go ahead.
I'll take POI.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Cool. So I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So as this closing up says, I will definitely do better. The first is on the reason as to why the aggressive reactions are unsuccessful. Literally, all of these are solved by an aggressive reaction for a few reasons. The first, there's usually a very high buy-in for various other African states who want to invest within the intervention to stabilize coup-prone states and deter future coups. Our argument here was quite simple. It was that oftentimes people do not like coups, African states do not like coups because of the spillover effect that they might have over other countries. Hence why there's oftentimes very universal backing behind making sure that these coups are actually stopped. And the only way to do that is just by doing it via military intervention. This means that maybe there's very limited budget right now, as OO says, but you increase the budget when you opt for an aggressive reaction because most people are willing to pull in their resources for you. Second, this response also applies to information. The incentive and want to stabilize African nations means various other African states have incentive to pull together their information and their resources to improve military coordination. This means if a lot of the ideas coming from OO is that they will not be done well, we counter assert and we prove better that you can do it well because you are getting information and you're getting financial support not only from other African actors but also from various other international entities as well. The second is that there's a lot of arguments like weighing. So states perhaps might hate South Africa, but this team doesn't prove this. This team doesn't prove. But African states hate coups significantly more. So coups are a uniquely regional threat that threatens to spill over to other African states. Hence why most states and most of the public are likely going to back the African Union because coups are definitely the worst option compared to South Africa. The third is that this is non-comparative. OG does a good enough job in explaining why coups are worse than military intervention. So a lot of the OO, some are like inflammatory rhetoric of families being enraged, are actually worse on the comparative, where the AU leaves them to suffer at the whims and the desires of coup leaders that do not care about them, that are going to kill them, that repress their freedom, and that plunders their wealth. This means that while it is politically unpopular, the comparative of such coups being entrenched is significantly worse for a couple of reasons. The first is heightened social chaos and instability when a coup happens. The second is that they often plunder the wealth of the nation. That's why people don't like Baby Dot Duvalier. That's why people don't like Mengistu when they coup the nation, because oftentimes these coup leaders are just not very popular and they just lack the kind of legitimacy to be able to back them up. The only reasons why they're able to exert their power is because of the military that they control. And that's why we're able to win the debate. Because if we prove that our military can beat their military, we win this debate. The third is that this is an awful signal and precedence for African states because it encourages coups to spring up in various other African states because it's an absence of deterrence. So coups as they are right now are bad, but the absence of intervention inspires and encourages more coups to happen elsewhere within the region, which then not only amplifies the harms of OG, but also a unique impact coming from CG as well, to explain why in absence of that deterrence, you are likely going to encourage more coups to spring up in absence of it. The deterrence mechanism of AU's intervention is one that is particularly crucial. The second is that I want to deal with OO's POI, which is fair. The unique difference here is that the AU is oftentimes the best moderating force relative to no moderating force over their leaders. The second is that it deals with OO's idea of this being a first resort. I think that's a good thing. This means that it deters future coups. So this deals with urgency weighing as well. So it's not only about businesses that because that might be like very speculative, but the consolidation of power from coup leaders that makes them significantly more dangerous is a more certain harm that you should buy from our side. This means that there might be escalation right now. We prove that there's more immense buy-in that would have led to an AU victory. Importantly, our impact is that we deter and stop future coups, which is a unique impact that no other house really engages with. I also want to note that this is also about aggressive reaction. So most of OO's harm, if you listen a bit, are hounds of boots on the ground. So I want to just note, if the problem was geographical logistics, then you can still resort to sanctions or military embargoes. So there's a variety of other different aggressive reactions that you can pick and choose via information pooling, which likely means that you're going to do it in a relatively well manner as well. What are the reasons that passive reactions are awful? The first is that there is often unclear why coup leaders and dictators are necessarily receptive to diplomatic urges. In fact, both the AU and various international bodies passed resolutions on African coups that to this day are ignored and put to the side. The only actual way to enforce international laws and resolutions of conflict are to give them teeth that show that there are actual repercussions and consequences to the disobedience of this resolution. That's why you're able to make sure that they respect international law. That's why you're able to make sure that they respect things like democracy and the constitution. The second is that oftentimes such urges and suspension fall on deaf ears because there's no actual consequences. So even when states are suspended from the union, it is unclear as to why this was force dictator to the negotiating table, because dictators do not care about being suspended from the African Union if there's no tangible economic or political like consequences associated with it. The second is that there's very increasing compounding criticism against the AU. So in of any sort of intervention, people start to opt out from the AU more because people don't believe that the AU is the actual body that is capable of safeguarding peace within the region. So there's less incentive for people to want to pull resources in the future as well. Last one is that oftentimes, even when there's negotiation, the consolidation of power tends to be quite subtle. But I want to note that this is a chicken or the egg problem. So which one can you do first? So we use CEO's analysis. We say military interventions are the best way to push dictators into the corner. Then we open up room for discussion, which co-op CEOs benefit as well. I'll talk about CEO, but before I talk about CEO,
Yeah, so preventing coups is a speculative benefit. As you say, coups happen for a variety of reasons. What is assured is states pulling out their support for the African Union when they are forced to risk the lives of their citizens in conflicts they are unrelated to.
Actually, it's the opposite. Is that oftentimes when these coups encourage, oftentimes states are more prone to these coups, and oftentimes also they have to deal with the spillover consequences of these coups as well. So it's just about a matter of weighing. So maybe you are able to escalate, or maybe you need some amount of troops right now, but you're able to stop future troops from needing to intervene in this particular manner. But under yours at the house, when you have more and more coups emerging, that's probably where a lot of your harms manifest significantly worse. That's why people pull out more. But lastly, preventing coups isn't speculative. We argue as to why you're able to prevent a lot of coups, but not only that, we explain why you're able to deter coups, because coups are now significantly more expensive as well. This CEO actually helps us because they argue sanctions, but sanctions are literally what we can defend. Like according to the info slide, for all the reasons that they say, making the rebel goods more expensive to maintain, usually like the economic harms that tends to be more crippling. All of these are things that we can call up as well. This CEO team doesn't acknowledge the comparative of coup dictators that are in power being significantly worse. Insofar as we're able to disprove that oftentimes these dictators are not only bloodthirsty but also tend to plunder the wealth of the nation without any moderating force by the AU. Oftentimes they are significantly worse actor. They should not really credit within the round. So a lot of the OOs and CEOs are like, but we just prefer them over others. Our explanation was to explain that in absence of intervention, you encourage more coups, which is significantly worse for all the reasons that everyone here says. But secondly, we are also just able to explain so why in absence of interventions, you are likely going to just get worse leaders, but also less trust and less buy-in from anyone else into the AU. Right now is the best time. If you don't do it now, you won't do it in the future.